One thing you might notice is that both of the people on the front of this, or both of the stories that I chose for today, are specifically man based because when you hear rape, you assume man. And the first is obviously about a man. And we know that in most places, boys are the soldiers. Boys. In Sudan, the average age of a soldier is 13. Holy shit. Yeah, you got 8-year-olds in the Sudan running around and shooting each other. Yep. Getting hopped up on drugs. 8-year-olds. We don't live in the Sudan. We don't live in Australia. Australia is considered a first world country. Imagine that. Where they've got the kill all men slogan. Same as here in the United States with the kill all men slogan. Same thing in Great Britain with the kill all men slogan. Well, with all due respect, women are responsible. They're not held accountable. They're not held responsible. Women are 11 times more likely to be stalkers in this country. They are five times more likely to beat their children. Female teachers, just this year alone, it's a 6-to-1 ratio of female teachers being arrested for misconduct with students versus men here in the United States. 6-to-1. And how many of those men who were in teaching positions, how many of them were charged with having sex with a student? Just one. Just one. Only one. How many of those 24 women so far? How many of those 24 women so far had actual sex with the students? 20 out of 24. Yeah. I've been molested a lot as an adult. Sexually molested and sexually assaulted repeatedly by women. And you know what? Like most men, I was taught not to think of it as sexual assault. Not to say anything about it. Well, it is sexual assault. If a man pressuring you to date him is sexual assault, then a woman grabbing my genitalia is for surely sexual assault. If a man telling you no is sexual assault, then for surely a woman sodomizing me with a carrot is sexual assault. But do women see it as sexual assault when they do it? No. When they get busted doing such a thing, they say, well, it's okay when a man does it. No, it's not. You won't say it's okay when a man does it. You will bitch and whine and moan and complain that men do these things. Are they really? Are they really? I've been paying attention. I was preaching ignorance not too long ago, saying that the only category that women are in the lead as far as being victimized is sexual assault. It turns out I was wrong about that. Like with most things, the police simply don't give a shit and don't do their job for a man. Especially if he's a homeless man. Now, if he's rich and famous, like Johnny Depp, oh, god damn, everybody want to help that motherfucker out, don't they? It's Johnny Depp. Women don't want to be held responsible. They want everything to be men's fault. And as a result, men, being expectant of the catering business, we must cater to a woman's wants before our own needs. Many fathers are forced to cater to a fucked up woman's wants over his own children's needs because he knows that if he doesn't take that abuse, that his children will be abused. How many fathers do I know who have gotten between the mother and the child they were beating? A lot. How many of those children have gotten in between a woman and the father that she was beating? It's not so prevalent, but I've seen it. When you say kill all men, you complain that we're not paying women enough. Men work 7 hours of overtime every week, on average, more than women do. 7 hours of overtime. That's 14 hours in 2 weeks. 28 hours. 28 hours. It's almost 3/4 of a work week. In addition, 3/4 of a work week more than women work. That's why they get paid more. Men are getting paid less per hour on average, just so you know, because people are afraid of getting called sexist. Well, it's only sexist apparently if it's women. If a man gets paid less just because he's a man, that's not sexist, is it? That's not sexist at all. Hello, Jamie. Complaining about the State of the Union on my YouTube channel. Complaining about the State of the Union on my YouTube channel. And talking about how predatory women are the reason that we're stuck in the state of crisis we're in. I also blame predatory men and police officers. But this one I'm trying to be very pointed and be a jerk to specific people.
I only got $1. Pardon me? $1 and some of it. Oh, okay. Thank you. Yeah. Here.
Now, one thing that you might have noticed, most of the women that I know, most of the women that I talk to, most of the women that I interact with, most of them are not predatory in that way. Most of the women that I interact with, they're pretty all right. Are they going to come forward? They would, though, if it was false accusations. You don't know if they're false or not, but with a guy, you're going to make him jump through 10,000 hoops. I'm so sad.
Why?
I haven't got to pick up Cynthia in 3 days.
Oh, she's right over there. You hit on her. She needs it.
That is quite the superpower. Apparently she's got invisibility going on. Well, I was told that Miss Cynthia was over here, and I thought to myself, her superpowers must be going on because she's invisible. Well, I didn't want to disrupt the work. I usually just come in and I glance over, and if she's not here, I get myself a coffee and then I glance over again.
Once again today I was like, like, does Scotty call out?
My wife's trying to go get out there.
No, it's okay. It's just I'm not used to you wait for Cynthia.
Yeah, I was gonna pick on Cynthia.
Oh, okay, no problem. Y'all like to get out there?
Isn't she great?
I was hoping. I was bigger stocks.
Okay, good. Well, pull is usually in your direction, and push is usually in the other direction. Oh my God, you're reading my mind, aren't you? I see your fingers already pressing the buttons. Yeah. All right. You're a winner.
Yeah, I don't know how many.
Firm. It makes you press a bunch of buttons on this side too. Done. Oh! I'm down to like either my last $2 or my last $5. I wasn't sure.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, Miss Kate.
Yeah.
Thanks, ma'am. I've decided I'm gonna have to sue now. Debit card. I'm permanently injured. I'm so full of it, my eyes are brown. Please work. Not every man is a horrible person. Not every woman is a horrible person. And this whole sexist hating all men and the whole slogan of kill all men, and all, you do not stop to recognize that your sons are going to have to deal with that. One of the worst things we got going on right now is people wanting to pretend that women can't be predators and that all men are. It's horrible. Now we get to see women like that one who wanted to accuse that man of such horrible things because he didn't give her the Wi-Fi password. I want you to consider that. I want you to consider, as a woman, the prospect of going to prison because you didn't tell your husband the Wi-Fi password. I want you to think about how your service in the United States military could be ended like that because your husband accused you of sexual molestation over a Wi-Fi password. When I go saying these things, I'm not saying them lightly. I know how disrespectful they are. I know I'm being a bigot. I'm being just as much of a bigot as you are. Right and wrong is not based on gender. Our laws are not, well, they're starting to be based on gender again, aren't they? Societal roles. Regardless of what the law says, boys are taught societal roles from birth, and we are expected to keep them. We are expected, no matter what the political climate, no matter the abuse, no matter how much we have to give up, we are taught that it is our jobs to protect women and children. That is our jobs. When it comes to protecting our sons and daughters, you got to start off with saying, hey, we need to hold some reason and accountability here. And we need to not just assume guilt based on bias. That bias we were raised with as kids. All of us men are taught when we're born, this is our job to protect women and children. From the day that we're born, this is what we are being raised to be. We are raised that when we become adults, we should be men and pick up a rifle to protect our country and the women and children therein. This is what we're taught from birth. Now we've got society's expectations, and we've got our parents who are as different as we are, aren't they? Some of our parents are hippies, some of our parents are warmongers, some of our parents believe in the Second Amendment but not the First Amendment. Some of our parents believe in the First Amendment but not the Second Amendment. Some of us have one parent on one side and one parent on the other. Some of us had one parent who was a liberal and another parent who was a conservative. When it comes down to it, those societal norms and societal expectations are still expectations. And while women are saying, hey, we need to break free of this mold, you mean what you did in the 90s? A lot of us men helped. A lot of us men continue to help. We also get to see that the men who help you are the ones who are being damaged the most. The men who bail you out of an abusive relationship and then you go back. So they pay for you to move into a new apartment and they're your co-signer and you go back to the man who beat you and you tell the story differently. I'm going to give you an example here. Jerry Sparks. Her story with Ronald Reader in Alliance, Nebraska was that Ron Reader had thrown a bottle at her head, and it barely missed her head, and she was afraid for her and her kids. So myself and a lot of other people helped to get her a U-Haul and helped to physically move her from Alliance all the way, and I'm sure you guys have probably heard of this place. We moved her all the way to Montana. No, it was South Dakota, and then I helped move from South Dakota to Montana.
Oh, there might be around.
But then,
As I say, they might just be around.
when her boyfriend in Montana didn't work out,
Okay.
she had Ron Reader move up to Montana with her. And of course, the story that she had told about how she was afraid for her kids because he was throwing bottles at her head. Well, now she was telling a much softer version of the story. Oh, well, he was talking, and he just really talks with his hands a lot. And while he was talking with his hands, he knocked over an empty plastic bottle of Coca-Cola, and I was just freaking out because Lana made me freak out. That's right. She blamed it on another woman. And now, of course, based on the title of this video, you would not expect me to talk nicely to women, would you? You wouldn't expect me to defend women, would you? Well, the fact is we're all human. All of us. Whether you were born in Mexico and are an illegal alien, or you were born in Chicago and you're black, or you were born in Nebraska and you're white, no matter what language you speak, we're still humans, aren't we? Are women not human beings? Are men not human beings? The most disgusting thing here, though, is we've got a lot of women screaming this kill all men slogan, and there are no women speaking out. There are no women saying, hey, you know what? I got a son, and I'm not going to let you do that to him. There are no women going, my son is 6 years old. He's not responsible for any of that, and you need to stop blaming all men. He's going to be an adult one day. And it's not his fault just because he was born with the parts he was born with. We've also gotten to hear from a lot of boys that I personally know about their female predators, what they had to endure growing up, and why it is that they didn't turn those women in. Zach Richmond spoke about one of his babysitters growing up. Well, she couldn't take no for an answer. He was a young, impressionable boy. That's called grooming. But it's not just grooming. She engaged in those acts with him. And any women who watch this and have watched this far, I want to ask you to do one thing in your lives. Not that you'll listen, because I'm just mansplaining. But please try to put yourself in another person's shoes. You know, us guys are used to failure as far as getting what we want. We're used to having to sacrifice our lives and our time for others. That is our lives. Being treated like we're useless and like the part of our brain that processes any sort of intelligent thought is only that big. And meanwhile, look at the houses we build. I've known women in construction, and I have nothing but respect for women in construction. Nothing but respect. Now, when I hear a lot of women saying things like, we don't need men, I also see that they're living in a house, and the chances that that house is built entirely by women is next to nothing. Literally next to nothing in the United States. There's only one construction firm in the United States that's run by women, and they don't build houses, they remodel them. Run and operated entirely by women. They do remodels and refurbishments. And I only found them by accident when I was looking for a job.
I could have come over here. I just grabbed one. No, what's this?
One thing that I recognize when I'm walking through the store, well, many men pretend that they have to be afraid because there's men in the store. I have to be afraid of women doing horrible things like I see on these Facebook and YouTube videos. But you also notice that the women in this store aren't doing that to me. I don't get treated like I'm a rapist by every woman who goes by just because I'm a man. I don't get treated like I'm going to beat her up just because I'm going through the store. And it's very strange to me that so many people are all stuck on that. Now, that woman who wanted to pretend like her husband, who's in the military, was some horrible person who was a child molester and a rapist because you wouldn't know the Wi-Fi password? Are you kidding me? When women tell me that they don't need a man, I absolutely 100% agree, just not today. You don't need a man, you need a man's education. And not all men get that education. Not all men know how to fix things. Not all men know how to build things. Not every man knows how to read a tape measure. Not every man is an auto mechanic. But you know what? I'm going to tell you who two of my auto mechanics were in Chapel, Nebraska. One of them was Crystal Worley, a woman. The other one was Lan Engeline, another woman. Where did Lan Engeline learn how to do that? On a farm in South Dakota.
No, you're good.
So the point is that even with all of these hateful slogans going around like kill all men, for the most part, I can walk through a grocery store without women trying to kill me. It's not like women are actively attempting to murder me or murder all men. Obviously, we are capable of getting along. Obviously, we can disagree and still drink the same coffee. Now, whether or not the people who work here agree or disagree with me, I don't know, because I don't come here for politics. I come here to try to liven up the day. They're working folks. I'm incapable of working. And you know what? It's nice when someone comes in, lightens the mood, makes some jokes, and of course, clean, friendly jokes. You also notice, if you pay attention to my channel, that I know a lot of real raunchy and dirty jokes, and that people love telling me those kind of jokes. Do I reserve those? Yes, I do. Most of them I will not tell and will not repeat. Kind of like the N-word. Lots of people here like to use the N-word. I just let them know I don't like that word. Meanwhile, Ben Cookie Daniels seems to think because I'm not beating those people up that I support them. And that is for certainly not the case. I don't support violence. Oh my God. Oh my God. You're going to read my mind, aren't you?
Okay. I don't know what happened.
It's under promotions.
Yeah.
All right.
How do you know that?
It's a secret. I know how to work a lot of the stuff back there too, and I'm not going to tell you how I know how to do that.
Okay.
All right, I will. In Boulder, Colorado, there was a Starbucks I went to for 7 whole years, like religiously, and the people there were always totally cool to me. And because they were always totally cool to me, and because there was a lot of homeless people there that were getting kicked out of Starbucks for being drunk or being on drugs, so they threatened some of the folks at Starbucks, and after that, I started walking them out to the garbage can. And you would be surprised the kind of stuff that Starbucks employees will tell you on the way to and from the garbage can. Long story short, you're welcome.
Yeah.
Is there enough on there? Oh my God, yes.
Checkers.
Let's trade. Woohoo! All right, hope you don't mind, but even though there's nobody behind me, I'm going to go stand over there and wait for Miss Faith to hook me up. Thank you for being pleasant. I would love another stir stick. Thank you, Miss Faith. All right. Oh, I don't need this one anymore. But they write the little nice sayings on there, so I try to save the sleeves. They don't really help me out, but they kind of act as a temporary when I'm bleeding out my mangina. I didn't mean to say that in public. All right, so my phone is currently frozen out. I love threats and harassment over stuff from YouTube sites and web sleuths and stuff like that. I get told what a horrible person I am for eventually reacting the way I did. I tell you though, you don't get to threaten kids. You don't get to threaten to kill my little sister. You don't get to threaten to kill my niece. You don't get to threaten to kill Miss Jerry. You don't get to threaten to kill my loved ones and have me just say nothing. That's not going to happen. Being told that I deserve it because I'm a male is horrible. My little sister doesn't deserve it just because I'm a male. My niece doesn't deserve it just because I'm a male. Dallas Richmond didn't deserve it just because I'm a male. When it comes to predators, I don't care what gender you have or what color your skin is. What I care about is the safety of children. A lot of men have quote unquote gone their own way. The majority of these men are, well, as much as we want to type it up as if it's all the single rich men 24 to 28 years of age, it's really not. It's mostly single fathers. A whole bunch of single fathers here in the United States. Right now, I know at least 5 single fathers who are raising children that are not their own. As much as I dislike Todd Ruff because of his cowardice, I do acknowledge the fact that he helped to raise 5 children that were not his. Despite the fact that I don't particularly like my stepdad due to his cowardice, I do recognize that he helped to raise 4 children that were not his. I also recognize that my stepfather, Michael Scott Wade, did more for me than my father ever did. Did more for me than my mother ever did. And most of the occasions where women that I have known for years have talked about how they protected children by calling men to do it. And yes, I am ever thankful for those men. I am thankful for both the men and the women who protected me as a child from, well, horrible monsters like my mother and my little brother Michael's dad. His name is Larry. The lady who rescued us as a child, her name was Officer Jane LaRue of Longmont, Colorado. That's in Boulder County. The same county where John Benet Ramsey was killed. The same county where officers killed Demetrius Shankling. That King Soopers up there on Table Mesa in Boulder, Colorado, where that guy went in and shot a bunch of people. I lived up on Table Mesa and I went shopping there every day. There was a Walmart that I went to and stayed in the parking lot. There's actually 3 of them. 2 Walmarts and a Sam's Club. And one of the Walmarts I was at had a mass shooting as well. The Walmart that I stayed at when I was getting help from Mandy Singer in McCook, Nebraska, and also investigating the disappearances of Sunny Ceramic and several other women there at the hands of Andrea Hall. You know, obviously Andrea Hall was not a male. She definitely, for surely, was a predator. She also got to walk free on a lot of things that she took part in. Where's Sunny Ceramic? She's still missing. While I was there staying in that parking lot, police officers murdered a man after they jumped in front of his vehicle. The officer ran in front of this father's vehicle, father of 2. The officer ran in front of his vehicle, got hit by the vehicle, pulled out his service revolver, and blasted that father of 2 right in his head. Right there in the Walmart parking lot. There was also a shooting at the Winco Foods that I went to in Tacoma, Washington. Now, of course, none of these shootings, with the exception of the one in McCook, happened while I was actually in the area. I know exactly how to be sexist. I know exactly how to blame people who didn't do it. We all do. I know exactly how to blame the opposite gender. I know exactly how to blame my gender. I know exactly how to play off of your bias. But I'm not after playing off of your bias. I'm after you recognizing your bias and the destruction that it does to so many of our lives. Most of us men are not out here harming you. We're not out here raping you. We're not out here ignoring you. We're out here trying to take care of our loved ones, our friends, and our families. There's a whole bunch of women that came to me for help, that told me later on about how they'd come to me for help, but they literally had never said anything when they came to me. I had several women who complained about situations that they were in. I offered to go in with them to turn it into the police, and they told me no, they didn't want to do that. Well, that's her choice, not mine. One of the things that I've told almost every woman who's come to me for a rescue is, hey, if you're going to ask me to go into the police for you, the thing is that you need to go in with me. If the victim doesn't go in with me, the cops are not going to listen to me. I told Maddie Boa that when she was 15. I think she was 15 at the time. When she came down to the library, Boulder Creek, now mind you, she was one of the youngins that I was always trying to run off. You see, she doesn't stop to recognize that her hanging out there and selling drugs, people are just going to assume that all the men that are around her are trying to groom her for sex. Most of them don't realize that she's a lesbian. So we didn't even have a conversation until the day she showed up battered and bruised, complaining that her dad beat her up because he found out she was a lesbian. He beat her up and kicked her out of the house. I tried speaking to Officer Abel Ramos about the situation, about getting them kids out of there, you know, but also how a lot of them had messed up home lives. Ramos said that those kids had as much right to be there as I did, and he was right. At the same time, their parents should have kept closer wraps on them, should have cared more about them. A lot of these kids, their parents were on drugs and alcohol. And when they didn't get what they wanted, or had a bad date, or things just didn't go through well, those parents would get abusive and those kids would come out onto the streets with us. I tried to stay in Starbucks because that was base. That was a safe place for me, as a man, to be. As long as I was in Starbucks, I knew that the people who were there were paying attention. I knew that the staff members there knew who I was and knew where I was at all times. I knew that they had cameras there, and if anybody came in trying to pretend I was some sort of a monster, nobody was going to believe it, because all I do is sit there and drink my coffee and mess around on my computer. Which also wasn't entirely true, was it? No, it wasn't. No matter what I was working on, I had to make sure that I had video games playing in the background, because if I'm filling out an important piece of paperwork, like a job application, people kind of expect that they'll come and talk to me and I'll stop what I'm doing, and they kind of expect me to stop what I'm doing, and even if I let them know it's important, they're likely to just talk over me. But if I have a video game playing in the background, then when I see that person coming through the door, I can start playing that video game. They'll walk up behind me and they'll look at the video game and they'll go, "Oh, I see you're busy," and then they leave. That's one thing about being Starbucks Sean that was so annoying to me. I spent all that time trying to run them kids off so they weren't hanging out there doing the drugs with those heroin addicts. And then they come in and they want to talk to me in the Starbucks. They want me to be their therapist. They want me to fix their problems. They want me to hear their problems. There's a lot of times where there was an issue with a bunch of drug dealers and a bunch of kids down at the Boulder Public Library, and somebody got sent up to come grab me at Starbucks about the situation. Like when Shea Burton was choked out by her boyfriend Theo. Yep. Over 30 people watched him choke her out publicly, and instead of them doing something about it to stop it then and there, instead of calling the cops, instead of recording it so that there's evidence, what did they do? They came up to Starbucks 4 blocks away from the library to have me walk all the way down there and do something about it. Well, by the time I got down there, Theo was long gone. He ended up with a BOS in Boulder. That means beat on sight. That means if he shows up in Boulder, the locals are going to hurt him badly. The only way to get it worse is to get a KOS. Shea Burton didn't claim that he was a rapist, and she didn't claim that he raped their kids. If she had, he'd have a KOS in Boulder. There's another way to get a KOS in Boulder. If you get a Boulder local killed, you get a KOS. They also call it taking you up the mountain with a bottle, or just going up the mountain. What does going up the mountain with a bottle mean, or going up the mountain? It means that when somebody does something horrible like that, for example, the guy who killed Donnie Horn, if he came back to Boulder, Colorado, one of the locals would invite him up the mountain with a bottle of, well, for him it would have been whiskey. But if the man would have been a meth head, they'd tell him, oh, well, we've got all sorts of meth up the mountain. Just come on up. We got a party going on. If the man's drug of choice was Urban Coffee Company, then you say, hey, we got a whole bag of fresh Urban Coffee Company coffee up there. We got like 6 different flavors. You're going to love it. Come on up the mountain. And they go up the mountain. Sometimes they fall down. Sometimes they should have been paying attention to what mushrooms they were eating. There's just about any number of excuses that you can make for somebody up in the mountains having an accident. It's very rarely an accident. I'm just going to let you know that. A lot of these guys are experienced mountain men, and they could survive even if they were barely sober enough to move. I'm not honestly of the belief that every bit of abuse that happens in the United States comes from women. I only titled the video that because you guys tend to ignore men. When we tell you about women abusing children, most of the time it's because those children themselves have told us, and we're the only people those children trust. And that sucks when we're homeless, because no matter how much those youngins trust us, or no matter how much a woman who was just raped trusts us, the cops are still not going to listen to us. And if you are harmed and you want a homeless person to go turn it in for you, it doesn't work. You have to go with that homeless person. You have to go in there with that homeless person to turn in the crime that was committed against you. Many of the women who have told me about the things their fathers did, their husbands did, they told me because they thought that I was going to spread the word and that people were going to vigilante his sorry ass. Like I was just going to go spreading rumors instead of finding out if it's true or not. No matter what gender you are, no matter what color you are, no matter your sexual orientation, other than pedophile, I am not down with that. And if you ask me for help, you're probably going to get it. If you tell me that you are unsafe, you are going to get it. Amy Cleany Kingery committed a lot of crimes against me and against her children. But when she was screaming that she was afraid Joshua Rayborn was going to kill her, yeah, I definitely traveled 2 whole blocks on foot because it's all I had to make sure that nobody ended up killed. But again, like I tell you, I'm a homeless person out here. It's just assumed that I must be a drug addict, a heroin addict, a meth addict. It's just assumed that I must be a woman beater, or a child molester, or a rapist, or that I must be lazy, that my disabilities aren't real, that autism is a made-up disease. First of all, autism is not a disease. And second of all, I have Asperger's. It's not the same thing. Hello. It's not the same thing. Anyway, I've had my time in the shade here. I got to get back to my vehicle. Oh, sorry, ma'am. You are still too cute. I hope it doesn't creep you out too much that I stare at your dog.
Oh no, it's fine. I was waiting. My buddy was supposed to come try to cash in my ticket. I can't go in. I don't know where he went. He's being a walk. No, he's fine. That's fine. A lot of people like it. Good boy. Good boy, ain't you? Done a million miles with me.
There's a guy I usually go in for, but if your friend hasn't come by to take that ticket in a little bit, I'll take it in for you.
Appreciate it.
My car's over there at the parking lot for the library,
Oh yeah?
just right behind the Townsend Hall Citizen Center.
Okay. Alright. What I do while you're here?
Well, I'm gonna go put my coffee in there real quick because I'm gonna need a couple of minutes, but I could come back
No problem.
immediately after.
Alright, cool.
Yes, sir. Here's a guy that comes by, and I know he doesn't spend the money on heroin or anything like that because he's pretty nastified by that. Matter of fact, he's had a couple arguments that he was having a screaming contest with a guy out here, and it's one of the videos that I had to take down because it was seriously that bad. But the guy was like, you know what, you fucking junkies need to get the hell away from me. Get the fuck away from me with your needles. Get away from me with your fucking drugs. Get away from me with all of that shit. Just get the fuck away from me. Stay the fuck away from me. And that was right at the very beginning of it, and that was the nicest thing said. So when I see him down here, and it's not every day, but it's most days. If I see him down here, I make sure that if I'm planning on taking in my own cans, I make sure that I wait until the very end of the day to take my cans in, because I know that if I run in and turn in the thing for his cans, that it is going to go to food or gas. He doesn't have a car, he rides a bike. This is camp gas or camp fuel. Now, I could make a very good case about how this is all women's fault. The way that so many women are pretending like it's all our fault. The thing is, there are predatory men and predatory women, and we need to stop deciding people's guilt and innocence based on their gender. Women are more likely to make false allegations. Men aren't very likely to make false allegations because they're not likely to be heard. A man is more likely to run around saying that you have chlamydia. That's a man's version of the same thing. A man says she has chlamydia versus she says the man is a child molester or a rapist. Yeah, there is no comparison there whatsoever. None. Meanwhile, we get to see how many females actually are pedophiles. How many of them are actually that way to their own kids? Women are 5 times more likely to beat on their children. They are 11 times more likely to stalk somebody. They are a lot more likely to get others involved in the stalking. I don't remember the exact numbers on that because it's really conflicting. When it comes to a man who is stalking somebody, sometimes a man has an unwilling participant. An unwitting participant. That means that the person doesn't realize that they're helping someone to stalk somebody else. And it's usually just one, and it's just usually for a little tidbit of information. When a woman stalks you, she's more likely to get, well, as many people involved as possible. That's part of the reason for social networking, and that's also part of the reason that social media like Facebook and YouTube are so beloved, especially by women. The news might almost try to be partial sometimes, but vindictive and hateful women are always biased. Always. Then we have this fear of being victimized if we come forward. Fear of being targeted by man-hater groups. Fuck, my goddamn back is killing me. It's easy to blame all whites. It's easy to blame all men. It's easy to play on bias, especially if you pick the right bias. You know, during the Civil War, a lot of white people gave up their lives for black people to not be slaves. The overwhelming voting majority was against slavery. We get it shoved in our faces every day as white men, that white men did this, white men did this. We have white men who go, oh, well, you know what? They were sold by their own people in Africa, so that makes it okay. No, it doesn't. Let's pretend that it's not a black person, but a child. Okay? Let's say a child's own parents in Africa, of course, they're black Africans, same as the child they're selling. Let's say those African parents sell their child, or a child from a warring village, to some Dutch whiteys. And those Dutch whiteys use those children as sex toys. Are those Dutch whiteys absolved of those sins because black people sold those children? Because their parents sold them? Because they're not the ones who sold the child? Not sure if you knew this, but you were allowed to fuck your livestock back then. That's how black people were considered. Livestock. However, bestiality, that's literally having sex with animals, is against God's law, according to the Bible, according to the Quran. And it was against the law back then, too. Against our laws. It's also against British law. Before we were a nation, we were under British law. And what are we doing with it? What are we doing with that accumulated information? We're ignoring it for miseducation, to play on bias. We've gone back to the Stone Age, and all American males are on witch trial at the moment. Just like in Salem, Massachusetts, women weren't the only ones crucified as witches. That's something that women in this country will never let any of us live down, despite the fact that none of us benefited from it. And none of us were alive to have committed those atrocities ourselves. And how is it our place to judge? You know what ergot is? It's one of the primary chemicals used in LSD-25. It's a wheat rust. That's the name of a type of fungus that grows on wheat. It can make you trip like a motherfucker. If your grain is tainted even by a little bit of ergot, it can result in hallucinations. It can also result in cardiac arrest. It can result in you forgetting how to breathe. Literally, forgetting how to breathe. Excuse me, says I, but witch hunting 200, 300, 400 years ago. Especially when it was not gender specific. The majority of those who were killed as witches were men. Starting with Martin Luther. And we only start with Martin Luther because he's the first well-documented. The first well-documented of the modern Christian age. The modern Christian age has lasted about 700 years. And it's been scary as shit all throughout. Much like the Germans in World War II and prior. The history of Christianity is the history of wolves in sheep's clothing, preying on others and whining that they're being preyed upon. That man-hating lesbian who was raped by her alcoholic dad over and over and over and over again. Who's taken her time to get on the internet and hate all men. She's probably done 1,000 underhanded things to men in her life to try to make up for the fact that she never turned in the one man who was guilty, her own daddy. Let me tell you something, girlie. My stepdad, his name is Michael Scott Wade. He is for surely an asshole and an idiot. But one thing that he is not a child molester. He is not a rapist. And even though your daddy or stepdaddy may have touched you inappropriately, Michael Scott Wade never touched me sexually. And the only times he ever physically assaulted me, it was non-sexual. It was him being a dumbass and thinking that he could stand toe-to-toe with a boy who grew up in a system. Hell no, son. You stood as much chance of winning that fight as a fart in the windstalk. He didn't stick around long. He's still married to my mom. He's still the same simp he always was. But he's not a sexual abuser. He's not a predator. My mom is. Scott's just old and lonely and set in his ways and afraid of dying alone. I can go ahead and blame women all I want. But it's men doing this too. Men taking part in it too. While women blame all men for the 10% of men that they date. See, here's the way that it's expected to go according to social norms. Guy is supposed to ask girl out, and she's supposed to decide if she wants to or not. The ball is 100% in her court. All she's got to do is sit upon her throne and pass judgment. You're not worthy. 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 Oh, I'll give you a try. Nope, all men are evil. The one good-looking guy that I chose, the one with basically the option to have any woman that he wants, and he's going to pick the prettiest of the bunch. So I spent all of this time, hours and hours, making sure I pick out the cutest outfit and paint on the prettiest face so that I look prettier and more cute and more attractive to this kind of guy than other women. I used to have a hell of a six-pack. I'm also not that pretty to look at. But I noticed that if I took off my shirt on Pearl Street in Boulder, Colorado, women did not even realize I had eyeballs. The majority of them, absolutely, the first thing they noticed was my abdomen. Let's talk about dressing for the occasion. Let's say you're one of those women who thinks that pedophiles are disgusting. Any guy who would try having sex with a little girl is a pervert. So what do? You're 23 years old, but you're short for your age, right? You're only 5'2", 5'3". You're pretty friggin' short. So it's a cold night out, and you're going to go to the bar. Now, instead of dressing age appropriate for the situation, and age appropriate for attracting grown men, you want to dress as a Catholic schoolgirl, but not a Catholic schoolgirl because you want to be a slutty Catholic schoolgirl. So, of course, you've got the pleated Catholic schoolgirl's skirt, not going past the knees, though. It's above the knees. You've got the knee-length socks, of course, and the cute little shiny little girl shoes. And you've got this nice white button-up blouse that's not buttoned up. It's tied in a knot in the center with a bright red bra underneath. You're advertising underage. You're 23 years of age, going to the bar, trolling for pedophiles. Let's talk about appropriate for work. Oh, well, a woman should be able to dress however she wants. Men dress however they want. No, they don't. The chances of you having a cross-dressing man in your office who dresses like a man every day and uses his man voice every day are pretty good. There is a pretty good chance that he is dressing work appropriately.
Hey, Matt. How are you on the phone?
Oh, no, I was talking to my YouTube channel.
He came and turned it into somebody else.
Do what?
He turned it into somebody else.
You were able to turn yours in?
No, but he turned it into somebody else.
Ah. All right. Well, I guess I'll walk back over there. Let me grab my cane.
I appreciate it.
Yes, sir. Just because I like your dog. Well, also, you talk to me like I'm a person, but I don't want to brag about that.
We are a person.
Thank you.
We all are.
All right.
I just talking mad. Some one of these days I gotta get some.
Well, I'm going to end this video because I got an errand to go run. Be safe, YouTubers and all that. Y'all know how I end these videos. Good to be rid of you. Thank you for coming to visit. Stay out of trouble or don't get caught. Remember, you are your brother's keeper and your sister's too, and no victim left behind.